I'm joined now by Peter Bechtold. He's the former director of Near East and North Africa Studies at the Foreign Service Institute at the U.S. State Department. Peter, before we talk a little bit about Syria, I want to get your take on the G7 foreign ministers talking about malign behavior by Russia. Of course, that story coming after we talked about Beijing saying that there's a strengthening of China-Russia ties. What do you make of all of this?
Goodness, the European countries have been concerned about Russia reverting to the time of the Soviet Union just a little bit. And I think that they are concerned about the hardliners having come to power in Hungary, in Poland, and the Czech Republic. But harping on the issue in Ukraine is not going to change very much, because in the country of Ukraine, there are Russians, ethnic Russian speakers in the eastern area. And their future needs to be addressed in a comprehensive way. The British government has been influenced very heavily from everything that I come across by the efforts to poison the double agent. And this plays very strongly in England. So the G7, I think they want to stick together. They want to show a common front vis-a-vis everybody else at a critical time.
Let me ask you about sticking together. Let's talk a little bit about Syria. We know that Emmanuel Macron's here in Washington for a state visit. Both the U.S. and France were involved in the recent airstrikes in Syria, but there seems to be differences between these two leaders when it comes to Syria. Trump really has made it clear he wants to get out of Syria. Macron would like the U.S. to maintain a presence there. Where do you see this going?
Well, you know, we're always guessing about what is Donald Trump about. He says one thing one day, then in less than 24 hours he changes his mind. And what he seems to be most committed to are certain campaign promises. And so I think that he really wants to get out of Syria, at least as far as American troops are concerned. And here we do have to remember that the American troops in Syria are not there legally. The Russians are there by the invitation of the government of Syria. The American troops, the French and the British actions are actually a violation of international law. It really hurts me to have to say this, especially as one who has given 30 years of my life to working in the U.S. government on the Middle East. And so to get these troops out is the correct way to go. But the other thing, Mike, that I've come across since we last talked is that there are people in Washington who say the United States is playing no role in the future of Syria, and they want to get invited to a conference along with the other powers that are present. And that perhaps the bombing of the alleged chemical facility might have been a way to gain entry to the club. It's not a strong argument, but it has been made.
Well, let me ask more about, and that's an interesting point that you bring up, but let me ask more about the fighting itself. It seems like it's been around Damascus. Do you see a shift in the fighting as we head towards the summer?
Well, the government side seems to have almost mopped up the entire region. There may be a very few holdovers in Duma and East Ghouta, and they are not necessarily the residents of that area, but they are among the extreme organizations, of which there are very many, who are falsely called jihadists, because that's not a correct term technically. But they are extreme fundamentalist organizations, often with foreign fighters, almost all of them receiving money from abroad. For example, the Jaish-e-Islam that may have been the one committing whatever chemical attack took place in Duma, being supported by private money from Saudi Arabia. So it's a very complicated situation. But the movement that you asked about, Mike, is to the north. The city of Idlib, I remember driving through Idlib some years ago. It is a very, very hot spot, because on one side is Jebel Alawi. That is where the Alawi minority lives. And the Alawites are the ruling power since 1967.
Well,
on the other side are the Sunni rebels. And so this is where they're going.
right. Peter, thanks so much for joining us. Peter Bechtold in Portland, Oregon, with analysis there.